Oh, there he is.
Okay, Madam Chair, it's 9:30 and we do have a
Yep.
quorum.
All right. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It will be live streamed, recorded, and available on the internet by visiting the county's website at www.thecounty.ca. This meeting will be conducted as a virtual electronic meeting in accordance with the county's procedural bylaw. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is have a motion to confirm the agenda. Okay, all right. So the agenda of the Bilton Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee meeting of March 5th, 2025 be confirmed. All in favor? All right, thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none, then we'll go to the minutes of the previous meeting. I need a motion to put the minutes of the Bilton Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee meeting held February 5th, 2025 be adopted. I need them on the floor. Okay. So
I have an edit.
Okay.
are you moving that motion,
Yeah.
Bob? Yeah, okay.
No, I'm not.
No, you're not.
Okay. Procedurally, through the chair, the motion, put the motion on the floor and then
Yes.
entertain edits. And then
Do
vote.
edits then. So we get, the motion has to be on the floor for discussion and then we can vote on it. Okay, so do I have a mover to get it on the floor for discussion? And seconder? Thank you, Arjon, moving. Seconder? Michael Miller, second for the motion to get the agenda minutes on the floor. Okay, now any amendments to the minutes or corrections, updates?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have a minor one.
Okay.
The minutes reflect that I was a backup person for Edwin on the task force with regard to the motion picture permits. And I believe that Sam was the backup, not me.
Okay.
So
All right.
I'll just pull up the reference if I can quickly find it. Yep, it's section 8.5,
Yes.
the second bullet.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I
All right.
can-
So yeah,
can
and
adjust.
we will need to address that because Sam is no longer with us, right? And as the committee on the committee. Okay. All right. So put a note to do that later. Okay. So I have any other corrections or addendums or changes to the minutes of the previous meeting?
Everybody's seen it.
Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote on that for the minutes to be received. All in favor? No. Thank
As
you.
amended, correct? Yeah.
As amended, yes.
amended.
Yeah. All right, so now we have announcements.
Yes, Madam, hang on. Madam Chair, just one, actually Bob Walden pointed me to this. The National Trust of Canada, there's a conference in 2025. They've issued a call for presentations. This is all heritage sector work. Submission deadline of April 4th, 2025 for the National Trust Conference. If anybody has any suggestions or would like more information, I can circulate this to the committee.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, Edwin?
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm sorry I came on late, just had a problem with my computer. I just want to make a brief announcement, rather fun. Today is the 50th anniversary of the Ontario Heritage Act being introduced in the county, in the province. 5th of March, 1975, after a hell of a long struggle to get an act in place. And just, of course, our own advisory committee is based on, given mandate by that act in 1975, renewed in 2005. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for reminding us of that. Time goes by quickly.
Doesn't it just?
Okay, so no further announcements. We will move on to 7.1 Heritage Permit Applications HP 022519 Whitechapel Road, Bloomfield Hollowell Ward. So the motion reads that that permit will be received. That the Built and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee approves the permit application on Whitechapel Road, Bloomfield Hollowell Ward, and that the recommendation that council approves that property grant for heritage permit application on Whitechapel Road, Belleville and Hollowell Ward for up to $5,000. So that is now open for discussion. Any comments and questions?
Madam Chair, if we could put that on the floor before we discuss.
Yes, okay, yep. Mover and seconder. Thank you, Valerie moving and Michael seconding. Thank you. All right, now discussion. And questions.
And Madam Chair, if I may, just for the benefit of the committee, Deborah Marshall, who is associated with the Whitechapel, is here in the meeting and has come in order to answer questions if the committee has any.
Okay.
Deborah, can you hear us? You're on mute.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have some questions for Deborah or comments to make about this application? Valerie, thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair. We were of the opinion that there were going to be two proposals. We have seen one. Is there another one coming, or one is suffice?
If I may answer that, we have received one, and a precedent was set by the Hudson Log Home that council accepted one, approved the application based on a quote coming in. It had not yet been received. It's a very limited service. And so we were fortunate enough to get a quote from the top vibration specialist. So at this point, there is no other one coming in.
Okay. So it is a specialized area of study and engineering, and sometimes you cannot find a second one that is prepared to even quote on it. So,
Exactly.
yep. Any other further questions on this or discussion? Bob, please.
Yes, please. Thanks, Madam Chair. So with regard to the one quote, this sounds like, I'll just make an observation, very similar to the Ontario government procurement rules, where you can do a sole source procurement if there are a limited number of qualified consultants available. So I don't think it's out of line, but I guess I see Emily's on the call as well. And since this is my first time looking at one of these applications, I'm just going to ask staff to confirm the application meets all the applicable criteria. If you could respond to that, please.
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. So technically it doesn't. I think that the grant bylaw stipulates that a minimum of 2 quotes shall be provided. So let me just pull up the grant bylaw here. Bear with me.
Could I make it easier? I think we've addressed the single quote question, but apart from that, it meets all the criteria. Is that correct?
I haven't, I'm not able to confirm that. Just bear with me for a second. Could we maybe put a pin in that just for a minute and I'll have a look at the bylaw? Okay, thank you.
Anything, anyone else has a comment? Edwin, is your hand up to speak, or is that just,
No.
okay, all right, so, okay, all right, thank you, Ed. And Michael?
I think I know the answer, but just in view of the recent announcements from the provincial government, we are assured that this is in fact a Canadian firm. Sorry, but you got it.
Oh, trust me, trust me.
Yeah, yes, that should be added to our list of criteria that we're dealing with everybody who's from Canada. Yes, Edwin.
Michael, Monier, I looked at the quote and I know the company and they've been doing business in Ontario for 35 years.
Yeah, all right,
Yeah,
good.
no,
They
that's
are a
fine.
Canadian company for sure.
It's a little bit tongue in cheek,
Yes.
I must say, but we're going to have to add that to all of our criteria now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a one question for more likely Edwin would know this one. How long has have you reviewed the criteria for the granting proposal in this for the how do we get the grant? Because when I was reading how the money was allotted, it specifically says structure in the outside, structure here, and I'm thinking that maybe we need to review that because sometimes it isn't just an outside of the structure of the building. And I think we need to, but anyway, is that a question? When was it reviewed before?
So, sorry, when was, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
when was
Yes.
what reviewed before?
When was the criteria for the grant that's listed and the funding? They tie so much money to each category. And I'm wondering when that was last reviewed and updated.
Right. I'll leave it to Town Councillor Hirsch. I don't know that date.
Okay. All right. So, John, Councillor John, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it certainly hasn't changed in my time, and that's in the last six
Yeah.
and a half years. I would
Yeah.
suggest it is time for review, and that's
Yes.
something that we should perhaps undertake. For instance, the dollar signs haven't changed either,
No.
which means that those grants are worth less than half they were at the
Yeah.
beginning of the last term of council. So, and you know, when you look at this case, I think I think the application makes a clever distinction between actual work on the foundation and work necessary before doing work on the foundation to say you need to do this seismological review to determine what's happening before proceeding with any actual structural work. And to me, that fits very nicely how this should work. But we could probably spell that out in a revision to the guidelines.
I think it does need to be spelled out because it's folly to shore up, go out and do some repointing on a wall and find out that there's no structure underneath it. So you're not preserving the building. So they're missing the whole purpose of this activity. Also,
Indeed.
if you can't find people with the skill set, you can only, if there's only one company doing it, then you can't come back with two. You would have to lie and fake another estimate from some other company to technically meet the criteria. And we ran across that when the log house was needing updating way back at 10 years ago. We couldn't find anybody that was doing log restoration that was willing to take this project on anywhere near us. And what happens is the log building deteriorates even further because we can't, year after year, we couldn't find anybody. So it was a sad thing. So I think we need to be really reviewing that. So yes. So Emily, the answer is the permit complete. Did I give you enough time?
Yeah. So through the chair, I mean, I think that in looking at the grant bylaw, a lot of it is pretty subjective, consistency with the community improvement plan through which the grants are funded and those types of things. So to me, it's hard to say yes or no, just me being one person. I think that'll be up for council. But with the discussion of the multiple quotes, and, you know, perhaps there's not different contractors or firms with that expertise, I would suggest maybe in going forward, a good practice would be that the applicant could, you know, maybe still reach out to different firms. And if due to expertise or distance, those firms can't do work, maybe then just provide that, you know, provide that from those firms to demonstrate they have made that effort to reach out.
Mhm. Okay, all right. So thank you, Emily. Anyone, any other questions for Deborah or about this permit? Yes,
Madam
Valerie.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, I understand that Deborah is going to be hiring out of their own expense some kind of heritage architect to complete some of the work. Why is this? Is because the interpretation of the data hired by this company that will be provided will not be interpreted, and will the interpretation come through this architect hired?
If I could answer that.
Yeah.
In the quote, they do not do the interpretation. However, the Whitechapel will pay for it to be properly interpreted to move forward.
Madam Chair, thank you, Ms. Deborah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I think then that yes.
So I'm clear,
Okay.
and I'm not trying to pick the fly specks out of the pepper here, because we want to protect this heritage asset. That's the intent. But I guess when these applications come forward, the committee wants to make sure that they're reviewed and recommended in a very consistent way.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like there's some differences here. We've got one quote instead of two for the services, but I think we've discussed the rationale there. And maybe when this goes forward to council, there could be a little more explanation as to why there's only one and what attempts were made to secure a second. And then there's the issue, and this is why I didn't mean to put Emily on the spot, but that's why I was asking the question. When I read the criteria for the application, it sounded like it's to fund work that's to be done on the structure,
Mm-hmm.
whereas this is analytic work to determine if work has to be done on the structure. So it's a little bit different. So there must be some kind of supporting rationale to say, for example, there's no sense spending money on work if it's not the right work to be done. And I'm wondering if we should be taking care to just highlight that as part of the recommendation to council.
I think the rationale for that was discussed at the last meeting. If I'm wrong, correct me. We had a pretty good explanation from Deborah and the submission as to why they were doing it. And I think Deborah, if anyone on council asks the question to the rationale, are you prepared to discuss that with them or to give them the summary? You don't have a long time. A summary on that.
Absolutely.
Yep. And I think Bob, we have in the last 10 years, several buildings that are heritage buildings have come across this type of problem, that it's not just the outward structure of the building and the architecture, that in this county, there are buildings that were built on not solid ground and with solid footings. And that's come in with the several houses and buildings. So that's an issue that we need to address in the grant application form. Is there needs to be a category of that building being actually on firm terra firma and foundation to go forward to repair the windows or the stone or the doors and windows, that needs to come in that grant change in the grant application.
Right. I
but-
understand that,
But,
Madam
and I
Chair.
think
But-
council
but-
has seen that. I think if the council if you're ready to give that information, and I think the council will ask the question, and it will be and in our rationale, that's the reason why we have done it. So I think we got enough in our John Hirsch.
Thank you, Madam
Councilor.
Chair. Just in response to Bob, I think we should remember that this meeting is recorded, and some councilors will actually view the tape before this goes to vote. So they will have heard this conversation. They will have heard the rationale for one bidder, and they would have heard the rationale for why this study needs to be done in advance of to help scope out what restoration work might be. So I would not want to add any more text to these motions to complicate the issue. I think we should rely on council to do their proper homework and watch the meeting before this goes to council.
Oh, fair enough. And
Yes.
Madam Chair, through you,
Yeah.
that what I'm trying to resolve in my mind is that the context of the request that came to us was to determine whether or not vibration from operations at Picton terminals is the cause of deterioration. That puts it in a little bit different light than an investigation to determine whether the substrate under the foundation, for example, has integrity. I'm not explaining this very well, but there's a little hesitation on my part as to the rationale that's being put forward.
So, okay, Edwin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bob, I think the two things can be linked together. The first item, as you say, is just to see where the vibration is causing the damage. Linked to that will be the condition assessment, where they'll be opening up of the foundation and actually verifying whether the cracking and the vibration, which be the cracking which would be associated with the vibration, is occurring, and that is what would then have to be dealt with in terms of reinforcement of that old rubble stone foundation in the course of any repairs. That information would actually verify the need for more than, as Madam Chair says, more than just repointing. We'd probably looking at some reinforcement, stainless steel reinforcement being put into that foundation.
And Michael, did you have your hand up for?
No, I mean, I think I agree with Edwin. I think it's clear that, yes, was the original foundation, okay and so forth, and does that need addressing? But I mean, it's almost self-evident that this vibration is going to cause damage. Any vibration causes damage when you get right down to it. And I think it's a tricky one, but if we're going to go further with asking for support for this particular heritage project, we need to have the fundamentals. And we have to be able to show clearly that the damage is occurring and it's occurring because. And I think that then leads us on to the ability to ask for the Whitechapel to reasonably apply for additional support, in that it's being damaged by a change in what I would consider county policy, in a sense. I mean, that the council has made an agreement here. The result may be damage to this particular heritage project, and as a result of that, it leads us on to whether council should take some responsibility, fiscal, I suppose, in view of that. But clearly we need the diagnosis. You need the statistics. We're not
I-
Mr. Trump here.
Yeah.
need
I
the
think
facts.
it is, they need to, this information will be beneficial through the diagnosis, because once you get it back, if there's no vibration, then they will have to explore what else might be happening underneath the building. So you've got to go through that. So you can't do it all at once. Is it next to steps? If it's a rubble stone foundation, maybe it's water that's coming in. I don't know. But the vibrations seem to be, they're new, and they certainly were not there when the chapel was built. So let's get that off the table. If it's that, then we know that's that. And what we do to shore it up and because of vibration. If it's not that, if there's no vibration, minimal vibration that's coming through, then they're going to have to look for another reason why this is occurring. That's the diagnosis process. Yes, Michael.
Well, and assuming that we do discover that there's some damage as a result of this, it might then lead on to how much is going to be required to make the repair. And that may lead to a significant dilemma in that, what is the solution, or is there a solution? Is there actually a strategy possible short of, several $1 million? So you have to do it, but we might be prepared then to be faced with a further dilemma.
Yeah. So it's just step one in the diagnosis process. And I think that's not reflected in the way the grant criteria are written, that we understand that it's very complicated for some buildings in how it would seem to be just the exteriors were looked at before, and maybe we thought they were all on firm ground, but now we know, and we need to have that allowance in there that we have to go through steps to see. Yeah. Edwin, do you have a response?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a little addition to what Michael said. I don't think at the moment we can get any sense of the extent, and therefore what the cost might be. But Michael, there are solutions with rubble stone foundation precedent solutions for how they can be reinforced. I won't go into detail, but there are more than a few ways. I'll mention one way. There's a way in which an extraordinary thing where a form of stainless steel netting is pushed into the joints are raked out and is pushed into the joints around the stones. It's all malleable, and then it's repointed. And of course, now you've got a reinforcement sort of framework or skin on the outside of that rubble stone wall. It can be done on both sides of the wall. So I don't want to go into the great detail, but I'm just saying there are precedent ways of solving vibration damage in walls like this. If it's very minor, it might involve a small amount of what we call low pressure grouting, a very fine lime solution which is allowed to under pressure, light pressure, to infiltrate into the joints and into the cracks.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there further discussion on this motion? No? Can I then call the vote for the motion to be that, Ben, do you want me to read it again?
It's not necessary.
Okay. So all in favor for $5,000 for them? Thank you. I see the motion's passed.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Now, we go on to 7.2. This is a referred motion regarding exploring the heritage impact assessment of the Whitechapel.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I will share my screen with the text from the motion. This was passed at the last council meeting that we deferred the discussion
okay.
to this meeting. So procedurally, we do have to do something with it if what the committee has just decided may settle the issue, but that's up to the committee. So just bear with me for 1 second.
Oh. Wow.
No, let me zoom in a bit here.
Hmm. Okay.
So, Madam Chair, if the committee is satisfied that the issues have been addressed by the Heritage Grant, one option would be to withdraw this motion, or to defer it rather indefinitely, perhaps until the results come back from the study, or
Madam Chair,
Okay.
can I just
Yes,
ask a
Edwin?
question of Ben? Ben, it seems to me that the item really, it turns now on this bottom, the very bottom line of the second part of the motion to ensure public notice is adhered to. Is that correct?
through the chair, that motion was passed at council when this originally went to council in January. And it was because this motion, we discussed it at the the December Built and Cultural Heritage meeting. And it was just added to the agenda at the last minute. So the public notice requirement there was council saying there wasn't really enough time for the public to take a look at this discussion before the committee voted on it. So it came back to the committee, was publicized with the agenda package. And as you'll recall, at the February meeting, we had some deputations and comments from the audience because of the public notice. So that public notice has been satisfied. The question, the deferred motion is the first motion, the original motion by Michael and Edwin. So it's back on this agenda by virtue of a vote at the last committee meeting, and it's up to the committee to decide what to do with this now.
Madam
So,
Chair, can I
yes,
ask?
Edwin?
It seems to me that Michael and I originally proposed a heritage impact assessment, which would be the sort of, like, the ideal sort of way to go forward. But realizing that this was going to cause some issues around about funding and so on, we scoped our second motion scoped down the whole intended investigation and assessment to almost to anticipating an appropriate size of assessment to fit into the budget, the grant funding available. And I think that our second motion fulfills the requirement of what we need to investigate to understand the issues which we've all been discussing. I think it replaces the HIA requirement.
Okay. So Ben,
what I might suggest, Madam Chair, through you, is a motion, perhaps from Michael and Edwin, to withdraw this motion. So the motion was passed, but it was referred back by council. So it's back in this committee's court to deal with. And as Michael and Edwin were the original movers and seconders, it might be appropriate, if this is the will of the committee, to withdraw this.
okay, so, and do they have to, Michael and Edwin, do they need to be the movers and seconders of that motion, that they withdraw their motion from the?
They do not. It's
No,
been referred
okay.
to the committee. There is a certain symmetry to it, but they do not.
Well, let's stick with symmetry for a while. Do you, is that what you will take it off the table? Is that what we'll do? Withdraw it?
Well, we're proposing to
Yeah.
withdraw the motion, Madam Chair.
Withdraw it?
Yes,
Yes, we're proposing to withdraw the motion completely.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
Then we would need,
a
we
motion.
have a mover and a seconder, we would need a vote.
Okay, Edwin moves
Michael,
it.
will you second it again?
Yeah, okay, good, there we are. All right, I call the vote. We'll withdraw, okay? Very good, thank you. All right. So, now we go to 7
Oh,
point.
sorry,
No,
Madam Chair, one
Yeah,
more thing. We'll have that motion. We do have a motion on the agenda to just receive this discussion.
okay.
So if we could entertain that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we have the motion that the Milton Hill discussion regarding the referred motion exploring the heritage impact assessment of the Whitechapel 19 Whitechapel Road, Belleville, Bloomfield, and Hollowell Ward be received, and a mover and a seconder. Yes, John, Councillor Hurst, and then everybody in favor. Yes, okay, we received that. Good. All right. 7.3, conservation, Heritage Conservation District signage, that the Built and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee discussion regarding Heritage Conservation District signage will be received. And I think we have a report back from that group. So let's, I think Bob, will you be, doing the report? Okay.
I can speak to that. Thanks, Madam Chair. So Edward and I have been just burning up the telephone lines, trying to find other examples of Heritage District signs. And I actually got a nice reply yesterday from Heritage Toronto, which referred me to a number of other municipalities. So I'll be following that up in due course. But one of the things that we have been discussing is the need for community engagement on the creation and the placement of these signs. And I think we discussed that last time. So we want to proceed to do our homework just to scope out what that might look like, what that might involve, who it might involve. So over the next couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be making some contacts with knowledgeable people to come back with some sort of an idea of how community engagement might take place for this. There's a number of worthy questions that I think the community engagement should be used to help answer. And something that I'm curious about is, are there any important dates or events where we might want to have this project dovetail with in the way of some sort of a unveiling or announcement about these signs? Is there something that the committee's aware of that we should be aware of in the planning of this?
Okay, I don't have any, nothing springs to mind if for this being there. Councillor Hirsch. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Perhaps, Bob, when we look at the month of June, when we're having the conference here and entertaining heritage folks from around the province, if we could, I saw the grimace. If we could be ready by then, it would be an interesting adjunct to that conference to be able to announce our signage. But while I have the floor, I would just ask: have you talked to county staff about the signage policy? Because we do have, we did agree some years ago about exactly what signs should look like and relative sizes and stuff like that. There's a color scheme and blah, blah, blah. As long as you're on top of that and we're not going against that, then we should be good.
I from my point of view, I think your target audience is what you need to focus on. If you're trying to get locals that live here, you need to look at an activity. If you're looking at a meeting or something that would naturally occur but where locals would come out and have an opportunity to give you input on it, then but the group that's coming in the end of June will be from around the province, so we might pick up ideas from them on what we might do, but that won't be the group locals of what you're going to have get local feedback. So the target audience needs to be really well thought out, and which activity we'll have. Right offhand, I'm not thinking of sometimes that if you're going to an event, you're focused on the event and you don't want to be sidetracked. And they don't come over to your booth or your input. Yeah. So
Well, just to clarify, Madam Chair, the reason I asked about events is not so much for community engagement, but for an announcement or an actual unveiling of a sign after the community engagement is done.
well, I'm not so sure we'll get the community engagement done that quick.
No, that's why I was grimacing when Councillor suggested the end of June. I think, I think there's some homework to be done first and then some planning. And I don't know if there's a budget for this.
Well, for having open houses in the following the act, Ben, we don't get billed for that when we have to have an open house as a mandatory requirement for, like the planning and all these things that we have those open houses for. We don't get billed. Our committee doesn't get billed for that, does it?
No, but something like this, I would inquire with staff about. I mean, it is in the committee's work plan, which was approved by council. So the actual nuts and bolts of payment, I will inquire out of which GL code is going to pay for this when it comes. But I imagine there would have to be a proposal with proposed costs to discuss with staff and probably ultimately council.
And advertising it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So I think the steps are we're going to do our homework to scope out what a community engagement should involve, not necessarily what it could involve. We want to keep this practical but effective. And then we'll come back with a proposal that has a timeline and a budget.
Okay.
And hopefully might even have some sort of a regular community event where we could be targeting to have the signs ready and some sort of an unveiling.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions or yes, Edwin?
Just a little addition to what Bob's been explaining. I think there's tremendous potential to link that signage, that HCD signage, to sort of tourism and sort of community understanding of what it all means. Partly in how we do the signage, partly we could have a QR code on our signage and we can link it back to the website. I think it has immense potential to be a really interesting sort of spur to people to follow up and understand more about both the HCD and High Street and Wellington Main Street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Edwin. Okay. So are we ready to move on to have the vote for receiving the update? All in favor? Thank you. All right, so we moving on to 7.4, planning file, site plan application file number SP 1424, base 31, rental building A. This submission and the motion for this is that the rental building A be endorsed by the Building and Cultural Heritage Committee, that regarding that application be approved or endorsed. Emily and Ben.
If we can just get a mover and seconder to begin.
Yes. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Hirsch, and the seconder, Bob. Okay. So.
And I will remind the committee through the chair that this was a submission made by Heritage Permit Task Team
Mhm.
who is our sort of subcommittee who reviews planning applications for heritage components. So that's Edwin, Ross, and Michael. So this submission was sent to planning early in February. And it is common practice. It's common practice for these working groups or task teams to make a submission on behalf of the committee to meet a certain deadline, but then for the committee to officially endorse the comments. So it's
Okay.
got the weight of the committee behind it. So that's why it's on the agenda today.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any questions or comments to make? Yes, Councillor Hurst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say this is a marvelous report, and I think some very good recommendations. Nothing like having professional heritage architects on our committee with tremendous amount of experience. But just a question: have you guys heard back from planning yet about this?
Edwin?
To you, Madam Chair. Councillor Hirsch, no, we haven't heard back, but you may have noticed that actually in the actual submission, we actually asked them to get back to us, because this has an unusual kind of quality to it, in the sense that the process doesn't allow for interaction between ourselves and the consultants. Obviously, that'll be a wonderful situation, but isn't the case. But we asked them to get back to us so we get some response back to understand how our submission had been received.
Well,
Okay.
hopefully, as the committee approves this and therefore council approves it,
Mhm.
that will encourage staff to respond.
Okay.
Well, if I may just add to that,
Yes.
basically we were asking the consultant group who are behind that to get back to staff. That was it's
Okay.
not staff sort of it's very much we're looking for the initiative to come back from the consultant group, to whom we put the questions and the various comments.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you, Edwin. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, Madam
Yes,
Chair, 5.4 in the submission. Thank you for this beautiful, well-written report to submission. However, could you answer 5.4 as non-applicable? How did we arrive at that?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that? How did we arrive at?
Okay, number 5.4?
Yes, you could read it. I haven't got it in front of me right now.
Okay, just 1 second.
Thank you.
Please. Okay, isolation of a heritage attribute from its surrounding environment, context, or significant relationship, and it says non-applicable, as well as 5.7, not applicable. Did we consider the adjoining properties, the properties, for example, the outlook, that I think that's located at the southeast corner or somewhere in the south corner there? That lookout is actually something that could be developed into something beautiful, that such as the lookout, the same lookout, the similar lookout in Vancouver. And so my question is, how did we arrive, or explain, how did you arrive at the non-applicable as to 5.4?
Right. Essentially, the intent, it's not very well explained in the requirements, but the whole notion of separation or isolation is if for argument's sake, a heritage residential building was isolated from perhaps a good quality garden by some other building being built between them, so that you could no longer connect the building and its original related landscape. Here, it doesn't directly apply, Larry, because it's right at the northeast corner of the property. So it doesn't isolate. We did emphasize that it disturbed views from a number of angles, a number of directions, but doesn't technically meet that requirement about isolating the building from its setting or its surroundings. Does that answer your question? No. It's a technicality in a sense.
It's
Your question, the purpose behind your question, I think, was answered in various other ways, about how the building impacted the existing Picton camp in terms of scale, character of the construction, and so on. But it didn't meet this particular criteria in the Ontario Heritage Toolkit about isolation. And I think if you talk to half a dozen consultants, you'd find them all scrubbing, concerned about how exactly isolation is applied. It's one of the slightly intangible attributes or characteristics we have to consider.
Okay,
Madam Chair, thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, yes, Bob?
It's a question, and I don't know if it's a question that anyone on the committee can answer. It's probably more a question of the proponent and their consultant, but perhaps Edwin and one of his other committee task team members can help me understand this. But why did they choose this location, which seems to be part of the base footprint, as opposed to going across the road where a high rise would be less impactful on the integrity of the base footprint? Do we know that?
Right. Yes, we did.
Edwin.
We get in discussing it with them, Bob. It comes down to this: that they wanted to. It's a first stage. In other words, the base is part of one land parcel, and they wanted to get some degree of affordable housing and rental housing into the mix quickly. The other thing was that they wanted to make sure that it was all walkable. The intent is that there will be some degree of first retail over the entire site, because the entire site is very large and will involve 5 other villages, which all have their own local retail in due course. But this, at the base, is where the first retail is going to be located. And they wanted people to be in walking distance of that retail. So I think that's the most fundamental reason for locating it. They tried to locate it at the edge of the site, so to have the least impact on the sort of people's sense of the structure of the camp, but as I say, on the edge. But I think the problem from our point of view as a committee was that because this is housing which is going to be funded by the Canadian sorry, it is CHMC. Thanks so much. CHMC funding from Ottawa. The funding is very tight, and so a building which has a very simple envelope like this one, which is essentially just a large rectangle, very simple floor plate which repeats itself on 7 stories, is the way to bring the costs in line with CHMC budget requirements. It's unfortunate because there's not a lot of room for maneuver, and I think we stressed that in our report, that we understood that there isn't a lot of room for maneuver, but asked them to make certain types of changes which were design changes, but essentially, for instance, like reducing the impact of the balconies, which at the moment are quite strong elements projecting out from that simple volume, softening the whole material construction of the building, just so that it was a bit more in sympathy with the existing fabric on this site. But it is very difficult, as I say, because the funding is very, very tight.
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, I should just add one
Yeah,
more interesting point
Thank-
here, which I
thank
think
you.
which you should be aware of. And that is that technically, when we make our assessment, there's guidance from the ministry that we should not be taking budgetary and other financial issues into account. We should give a pure objective heritage assessment, and it's up to council and the planners to decide how our evidence fits into the bigger picture. In this case, we acknowledged in our report that this was the case, but we were going to make so we acknowledged that there was limitations to what they could do, and then within that framework of the limitations, we gave comment about what I call fairly modest design comment.
Thank you, Edwin. Any further questions, clarification questions? Yeah, we certainly need affordable housing in the county, so it's a good initiative for that. All right, I think then I can call the motion to vote. All in favor for that going forward? Thank you very much. Now working group and task team updates. Do we have Heritage Designation Working Group? Any updates from you? No? No, okay. Cemetery Task Team, no, but I'm hoping that I've got a volunteer on the team. I'm hoping that Bob will flesh out our cemetery task team, because we are going to be having a meeting with the Troy Gilmore. I'm going to arrange that. So let me know, Bob, if you're wanting to be on the task team.
Sure, I'll help out if I can.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we've got a new volunteer, and we will be meeting with Troy now that dust is settled from budgets and everything going forward. Heritage permit task team, any more in the lineup for? No?
Don't think so.
Okay, all righty, well, yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may interrupt, if you would like to formalize Bob's appointment to the task team, we can
Okay,
do that with a vote
okay, all righty.
while you have him in the hot seat.
That's right. And witnesses.
Yes.
I understand there's cash and valuable prizes involved too.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah, bundles of that, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that if Bob has volunteered to be on the task team, so we have a motion that, how do we do that one with this?
We we can just a mover and a seconder.
Mover and seconder set Bob
Excellent.
Walden be on our task team. Thank you, Arjon and Ross. Okay, all in favor? Yes. Yeah, they're all
I
in
guess-
favor for more work for you.
Do I have to vote or?
You can vote against it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would be good. All right, so the updates from the working group and task teams be received. Did we get a mover and a seconder for that one? I didn't, yes.
No.
No, Michael is moving it, and Edwin is second it. They're short oral reports, all in favor, thank you. Master list of permits that we're going to be updating some at this time in our review. Do you have any, we're going to go through it and see? So
this master list includes the Whitechapel one that was
Okay.
voted previously.
so
There's, as I understand it, there's been nothing added since then. So
okay.
we just receive this every meeting.
Yes, okay, so let's receive the updated list then. We haven't had much movement on it lately, but we're getting back into work. Somebody want to move the updates? Ross, thank you, and Arjon, thank you, seconding. All in favor? Yeah, okay, good. Work plan. That's finished. I think we'll be, did we? I think I was asking you, Ben, about, an announcement that we will be reviewing the committee structure, doing kind of a postmortem on how this new structure has been working. And so in the future, if you think about it, and we will bring it back for discussion in a future meeting, to say what's worked and what hasn't worked. There's some changes that we'd like to see in structure, or how it does, because this has been the first third year of the new process, and we need to plan for when we have to do more changes for the next time. Yes, Michael.
Just a point of clarification, Madam Chair. It seems from the meeting I gathered that Councillor Grosso has left the committee.
Mm-hmm.
Are we required to have another member of council as part of our structure?
Through the
Yes.
chair, that is correct, and that will be on an upcoming council agenda.
Yeah.
So it's nothing that the committee can, do. That's up to the councillors to decide at a council meeting.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, we can certainly add to the work plan a review. Basically, we would style it as a review of the committee's terms of reference.
Mm-hmm.
We should proceed with a motion to add this to the work
Yep.
plan.
Yep.
Just to formalize it. So if somebody would like to do that, yeah.
Councillor is moving it, and seconder Edwin, okay, and and Bob.
So before you call the vote,
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah.
So could this review include the various reports? I would like to just understand how these reports came to be put together, get a little more background, and based on that, I may have some suggestions to make.
Yes, it will be, everything will be included in the review, like the meeting structure, whether we keep how many are virtual meetings and how many in-person meetings.
Good.
Has there been, we've combined several committees into one. Has the workload been too much or not enough, and how have we managed it, and the structure down, and operational organization on that. On which reports are you referring to when,
I potentially could make some suggestions on all of them. They're suggestions of more of a administrative and informational point of view.
okay.
Too much project management in my background, not to make some observations.
Okay, so yeah, because we have, this has been a really different structure than we've had in the county before. And so we were, this has been a real good experiment, and pilot run on this structure, and we can fine tune it and input. Yeah, sure. We can put
Okay.
that on, and we'll do a detailed look at it, and some works, something works, and we'll keep it, and if it hasn't worked, we'll figure it out to make it work. Okay, good. So now I can call the vote on this, that everybody understands that that's what we're doing at a future meeting. Okay, alrighty, all in favor? Thank you.
And then, Madam Chair, just a motion to receive this discussion.
Okay,
Oh,
we have, yeah, John, yeah, first.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Just further to our earlier discussion in this meeting about the granting program,
Mm,
could we add a new
That's-
item on the work
yes.
plan to
Mhm.
Yep,
to
yep.
potentially review and revise and recommend to council changes to the heritage granting program?
The requirements and the
Yeah.
the policy of that, yes.
And we will need some help from staff for this too, I would think, Ben.
Mhm.
Some thought as to, what sort of dollar signs are appropriate and that sort of thing.
That's fine. We can add this. Madam Chair, I presume Councillor Hirsch is moving that. If you would,
Yes.
Yes.
find a seconder for that.
Seconder, Ross, we'll give you a turn, Ross, there. Make sure you're in the minutes, everybody will believe you're here. Okay, so, have we covered our,
Well, we still need a
Haven't-
mover and second just to receive.
okay,
So to receive the discussion.
and we have a mover and a seconder, I gave
No,
those to
no,
you.
we don't.
No.
We don't.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay, Edwin and Michael, okay. All right, I'll call the
Bruce and
vote.
Tucson.
Thank you. All in favor? Yeah, okay. All right, and that's finished for the workload of our 7.7?
Madam
Okay,
Chair, may I
Yes.
just ask for an additional item under the work plan, please?
okay. Another one.
Review our heritage permit application form and our form for a property heritage grant, a historic heritage property grant. I won't go into detail, but they both need, I think, fairly radical rethinking. They're very difficult for people to understand, and as we said earlier, they didn't, for instance, contemplate the idea of a grant being given for a study to facilitate a heritage project. And I think I'd be very glad to work with people to actually revise, obviously with staff, to revise the forms, because at the moment they are not easy to use and do not necessarily provide the information, do not encourage people or give people the clues to how to provide the information required.
Okay. Ben,
If
did
I
you
could
get-
just add, Madam Chair, I would have assumed that whole thing is wrapped up in
Yes, in one.
in my motion.
Yeah.
Well,
Do-
could
do-
it be? Could it
Yeah,
be?
yeah,
That'd be great.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 The
I think that
forms and
was-
the guidelines and
Yeah.
parameters
Guidelines.
and
Yeah.
everything.
Brilliant. Okay, good.
that was my impression that
Okay.
we just it has to be a total review there because it's
Right.
not. Yeah.
Okay.
And if Edwin wants to write it, that's just great. Yeah.
I'll work with somebody. But it's interesting.
All right. So, okay. So now we're finished on we've got all that tidied up, the loose ends. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you, Ben, for keeping track of that. Next meeting, April 2nd, 2025. We'll be well into spring then, I hope. Yeah. So now I just need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Who would like to move? Arjon and Ross. I think everybody's moving to adjourn. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll be in touch.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good day.
Everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And I'll be in touch with Arjon and